Hello, my name is Colin Campbell. I'm with Polygon. You're looking at A Total War Saga, Thrones of Britannia, which is coming out next month. We're going to spend 10 minutes looking at how the game plays out in mostly its battle scenarios. You know the stuff where you're moving your military units around and kind of panicking when things go wrong, or enjoying those moments when you do the right thing. It's all about flanking and using your best army and your best positions in the right moment. Here you'll see the overmap, and we'll start just looking at some of the big picture stuff before we get down to the nitty gritty. Thrones of Britannia takes place, as you'd expect, in the British Isles. Here we are in East Anglia, where the Vikings have taken over a part of the country as far down as London. You can see there, though, that in the West Country is the Kingdom of Wessex, led by the phenomenal King Alfred the Great. And if you're a Viking, this is somebody to fear greatly. He has already given the Vikings a bloody nose, and you can expect more from him. But there are also lots of smaller kingdoms throughout Britain and Ireland, which can be used as vassals or as allies, or really just as targets for invasion. And here we're playing as a Viking nation which wants to secure its position in the West Country. It's dealing with the fact that there are invaders behind it. The Vikings weren't all chums with each other, but it's also worried about what might come from Alfred the Great. So in these games there is a big tactical element, or rather a strategic element, where you're looking after your country. So you're upgrading your cities, you're making sure that they're producing enough food and the economy is strong enough in order to keep your armies fed and paid. Otherwise things are going to go badly wrong. You also have to fortify your cities, and you can see here that one of my towns is under attack, and that's something I'm going to have to deal with. In the overmap, you move your armies from place to place, keeping in mind that this is a world of very differing seasons, so you don't want your army to be stuck out in the middle of nowhere as winter attacks. We're getting now into the part of the game where you really are fighting a battle, and so you can see there the different elements of your army, where you've got cavalry, where you've got levies, where you've got the elite soldiers who surround the general or the king, and you get a look at what you're up against. In this situation, the odds, as you can see from that yellow and red a totem in the middle, are pretty good for us, although I did play one in which it was much more difficult against a much more difficult foe, and I can tell you that it got pretty hairy at times. Here is this lovely view of England. You get to choose pretty much where or when you fight. You might not want to fight in the rain, and we can see here that there's lots of forests and trees which my opponent is going to try to use to his benefit. Before this battle, obviously I'm in a position where I'm trying to make sure that my armies are well trained. When I first recruit an army, they are at a pretty low level of expertise and of strength. So you can't just recruit an army and then go straight into battle. You need to build up your soldiers. You need to make sure that they're well trained, that they're well rested, that they're well fed, and that they're experienced. It's also important, as in all of these games which go back 17 years or so, that you deploy your armies correctly according to your enemy, according to the terrain, according to your goals. It's a bad idea, for example, just to have your cavalry sitting there doing nothing. It's a bad idea to have your archery right in front of your main body of army. You know, you need to move things around so that they can protect themselves, so that they can do the most damage possible. And in this game, which is a world of shield walls, it's all about movement. It's all about trying to outflank your opponents. It's all about trying to get round the side of them and try to make sure that you're not just standing there waiting for them to attack you. Now, here you can see the charge into the shield wall and the amount of damage you can do if you get that right. And if you get to a situation where you're charging into the shield wall and you've got perhaps some cavalry coming in from behind or from the side, then there's a situation where you can get some victories. And all the time when I'm playing these games, I have to remember that you know, for example, we sent the cavalry off there to take care of some of my enemies. You've got to bring them back into the fight, because if you forget a part of your army, that's really not a good idea at all. And so you can see here, we've got to deal with the fact that a lot of the enemies are in the woodlands. I'm sure my enemy general is right there in the middle, waiting for me to make a mistake so that he can come out. He probably knows that he's outnumbered, and you know, it's not one of those games where you're guaranteed a victory if you've just got the numbers. It's quite easy for things to go badly wrong, and if you're not careful about how you deploy your elite soldiers who surround the king or the general, then things can go badly wrong and morale will plummet and your people will just basically run away. What I also like about this game is that, unlike in previous Total War games where the size of the armies is a kind of representation of what actually happens, the size of these armies is kind of like what you would have seen at the time. These famous battles were really not much more than war bands fighting against each other, and I think what they've done here is capture a sense of the violence and frankly of the drama of these battles, the immediacy of them. And I really love kind of swooping in and taking a look at excruciating moments of danger when you think that perhaps things aren't going according to plan, especially. Here we can see though that things are going pretty much as you'd expect. This marauder, this invader has bitten off more than he can chew, and he's about to get absolutely taken down by my superior forces. I've got reinforcements coming in and they're going to make all the difference. When you're on the other side of that, by the way, when you realise that the other guy's got reinforcements and you're down to your elite soldiers or your levies, that's a really dispiriting moment. And I think that's what makes a good strategy game, where you're not just simply winning by numbers, you're not just simply winning by formula. Each battle has its own challenges and has its own pitfalls and downfalls. And here we can see we're really getting into the meat of the battle now. The cavalry are still, thank goodness, existing extant. The enemy are fleeing, and we can take care of them and finish them off. What will generally happen in these situations is when the battle is over, you'll have a choice of what to do with your captors. You can kill them if you want, you can sell them, or you can try to bring them into your army and they will fight for you just as well as they have fought for other people. There's another factor to this game is, you know, you have to remember that as a Viking you are basically in a country that you've invaded, and trying to keep the people sweet is important. They don't have a sense of nation in the same sense as we have today, but they certainly don't like to be abused or exploited, and so it's important to try to keep a balance going as best as you can. What I like about this also is the fluidity of the politics that you're involved in. That, you know, you have to use diplomacy in order to try to get what you want. It's worth knowing that, you know, there is no golden rule that said that the Anglo-Saxons would ultimately get on with the Vikings, that England would become a nation state. This is the sort of stuff that was happening at the time, and, you know, really anything could have happened. And I reckon that's why programs like Vikings, and I think the BBC recently did something, but from the Anglo-Saxon point of view, are so popular to us today, because each side had, you know, a reasonable reason for doing the things that it did. Although, of course, that is something you can debate with your history buff pals to the end of time. There are other parts of the game which would have been recognisable to the leaders of the day. How far they, for example, they look after their nearest and dearest, their family members, or the generals that surround them, the sort of people who go into battle for them, but also might have a dagger hidden away in the underfolds of their garments. So there's that internal politics that needs to be taken care of as well. Occasionally, the game will throw up a dilemma, a kind of binary dilemma, in which you have to decide which way to go, and you can decide in terms of feathering your own nest, or looking after your soldiers, or looking after the people who you're in charge of. And there are lots of upsides and downsides to the different decisions that you have to make as a leader, and I think that's always a useful simulation of being in charge of complex political hierarchies. So here we see it's all really coming to an end now. I think they're going to tell us, here it is, there's the victory at the end of the game. Well done, us. So Thrones of Britannia is coming out in early May on Windows PC. The Mac and Linux versions are coming out soon after that. We'll likely have a review when the game comes out. In the meantime, keep it with Polygon.
In Odin's name.